CO212, com check.
DPS, go. Inco, go. PUS, go. Surgeon, go. Booster, go. Copy that. We have a go from you guys.
This is Talking Sound.
Welcome to this edition of the Talking Sound podcast. Chris Jordan, your host here, coming at you live from Austin, Texas. The music you are listening to is the track Cape Town off the new album Choir Boy by the artist YAA Koala, known to the world as YAA Koala, known to his family as Alexa. He is in Cape Town, South Africa right now, via all over the world, stuck in Cape Town because of COVID. We're going to be talking about the creation of this new album, Choir Boy, about his production style, about how he teams up with other artists from around the globe for lyrics, things like that. Let's give another quick listen to some of this because it is so smooth.
But I'm hit it with the band. Why you pop it on the handstand? I ain't trying to make it there right. But I'ma hit it with the band. Yeah, that's right. I'ma hit it with the band. You pop it on the pivot, I'ma jump on top and get it. I can hit it way harder.
Alexei, YAA Koala, welcome to the program. How are you today, my friend?
Thank you for having me, Chris. I like what you're playing. That guy is pretty nice.
Yeah, he's pretty
Tell me
hip.
more about them.
As an electronic musician myself, whenever your PR people got a hold of me and were like, hey, we think that this would be a good fit for your show. We've heard some of the stuff you make from mutual friends, things like that. We think this would be great. I have been listening to this since they sent it to me. The backing tracks, the music, it covers such a panoply of styles. And really the production is so spot on and so polished, so well done. It was one of those like, yeah, of course I want to have this guy on. Let's start getting into...
Thank you, sir. First of all, as a speaker of English as a second language, you're really going to hit me with words like panoply, huh?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Challenge me from the start. It's all good.
You speak English as a second language so well, Alexa. Or Alexei, sorry. So let's start getting into a little bit of your story, because the reason I started with Cape Town is because, like I said in the intro, you landed in Cape Town randomly and just kind of got stuck there because of COVID. So what has that experience been like? What brought you to Cape Town to begin with as a musician, as a person, things like that? And let's get into a little bit of why you make the music you make.
Yeah, it was a long story getting here to Cape Town. In fall, I broke up with a girl I was with for a long time. So I thought I'd take a break, and I went to Barcelona. And there is this coastal area called Costa Brava. And I was with another friend, was trying to impress her, decided I'd climb a mountain. I have zero experience climbing anything, especially mountains. So a rock broke off, and I fell to the ground, had mild concussion, and broke my foot.
Oh my!
So I was immobile for a while, and my initial plan was to go skiing in the winter because, Russian, that's what we do. But I couldn't ski anymore because now I didn't have a working foot.
Yeah.
So everybody always raved about Cape Town, and I'm like, okay, cool, maybe it's time to check it out. So yeah, on a whim, I just booked a flight and came down here. It was February. My first month was really, the plan was to finish up the album. It's always good to, for me at least, I think for most people, to work in different places, because every time you have a different environment, your mind shifts a bit, and you can, it's a little bit easier to see and hear the tracks as an outsider, and which makes it easier to pick up things that you might have missed earlier, and kind of also see it as a bigger, just see a bigger picture.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I got here and I worked nonstop for a month, thinking that I would finish the project and then I'd take, a couple of weeks just to enjoy the country. And of course, by the time I finished, Corona hit and borders were closed and flights suspended. And it's been that for the last 4 months. There's still no domestic flights for recreational purposes, and nobody knows when the international flights will start running again. So for the time being, I'm here.
And, dude, stranger in a strange land. You could not be more that situation right now. To have literally just gone to Cape Town to get away for a little while and finish up a project, put some polishing touches on, and lo and behold, now you're doing the press junket from Cape Town. You're doing the release from Cape Town. You're doing virtual stuff from Cape Town to promote it.
The press junket is a very glorified name for it. I have a cat on my lap right now, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table speaking into a microphone all by myself. So.
And the best part is, not your cats.
That's the beautiful thing. The Airbnb came with 3 cats, which literally made this entire experience so much better, because the lockdown here was a lot stricter than everywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
You could not leave outside. Like you couldn't go to exercise. You couldn't walk your dogs if anybody had them.
Man,
you were only allowed to go to the grocery store. And luckily, my grocery store is kind of down the hill. Yeah. So I always had a reason to at least be outside a little bit. And that went on for 2 months.
Wow.
So, at least now it's a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, they don't play with things like that around there. I've had family in the past from South Africa. And with things like Ebola and stuff like that happen regularly over there in Africa, when they hear about a pandemic outbreak, they lock it all down, man. They do not play in Africa and South Africa with that stuff. It's interesting.
That's been my experience.
It's been. I'm sure it's been more than interesting. I mean, myself, as an AV technician, I spend most of my time on the road. And it's been an interesting experience for me to kind of wind the wheels down and come back to the home studio. And I was able to, I had enough time to get myself a distribution deal while COVID hit. Like, that's the only reason I got one, Alexei, was because I actively had time to pursue it. Like, it's ridiculous.
I wish I could report something as high achieving as you, but I think I got really good at making cocktails. I think that's my main accomplishment from the lockdown. But I'm killing it now, though.
There's nothing wrong with that. That is a perfectly saleable skill when COVID ends. So it's always good to be a multitasker.
Especially now that I lost the girl, I'll have to really come top of my game.
Exactly. Well, let's start getting into a little bit of what first brought you to making music and what brought about the moniker YAA Koala.
But the music, I think when I was about 5 or 6, I wrote my first song. It was about polar bears because, Russian, that's basically the only thing we hear growing up. Yeah. And it was super cute, I suppose. I think any song a kid comes up with will probably be cute by default to the kid's parents. So my parents took me to do like an exam, like an entrance exam. In Russia, you have to pass an entrance exam to get into a music school. So they took me to one, and I started doing piano lessons. So I did piano for 7 years. Did not enjoy it. It just was not my thing at the time. So I never did homework, just came to class, and whatever I learned, little that I learned was all done in class for the most part. Yeah. And then when I was a teenager, I picked up a guitar, and that was an easier sell because, a teenager, you could just, get a guitar, go sit around, play, impress everybody. Yeah, the girls are after you. Things are looking good, So the guitar became my thing. And then it's only in college that one day I was passing by the student union, and there was a grand piano, and I just sat at it and started playing. and it was just so beautiful. And I kind of, you know, it was the first time I truly appreciated it. I think as a kid, I never connected to it, but around that age, I was like, wow, this is really lovely.
Yeah.
And so I started playing, I guess, more regularly, and started doing music here and there with friends. I had, I guess, circuitous, is that the proper word? Circuitous road to music as a career. I am Russian, so I could not stay in the U.S. without a green card. And to get a green card, you kind of have to have a job that will, you know,
warrant a green
you.
card.
So so I had to, I had to go the corporate route and worked doing other things for a while. Got the green card, bounced, started a hip hop band, a duo. We did pretty well until things started getting better, and the other artists got. Let's just say we we had our differences eventually, and we split.
Yeah.
And following that, I just kind of realized that anytime you put so much effort into something, whether it's a project or, you know, something bigger, the more you're in control of the outcome, the better. And I didn't want to do another band, so I kind of flipped to electronic music, which was already a big influence in what I was doing earlier, and started doing electronic. And as you probably hear, I still have a lot of hip hop influences on the record. Yeah. I mean, it's still a big part of, you know, what I am, what I like, what I listen to.
Well, so, it's very interesting that you even bring that up, because as an electronic musician, the world of electronic music, and especially ambient, lo-fi music, things like that, have really, really crossed over into the hip-hop world now. Like, myself, the distribution that I picked up is through a hip-hop label.
Oh, that's cool.
You know? They were like, we're opening things up, and we're looking at some other stuff, and I was like, I make electronic music, and they're like, dude, this is really hip, you know?
I mean, about hip-hop these days, because, you know, like in the 90s, it was fairly formulaic. I mean, you have people like, you know, like Farside and Fugees and Diggable Planets who were doing, you know, of course, you know, Tribe, of course, who were doing things a little bit different, but even that was still within a particular formula. And these days, hip-hop is as diverse as it gets. Yeah, like trap is getting a little bit boring, but like the SoundCloud era, it was just amazing variety of different things, right? And that kind of continues. Record, it was a lot of electronic on it, like Sophie, the electronic producer, she did some tracks on it, a bunch of other people. I think Plume did a track on it. So that's kind of the beauty of hip-hop these days. Like, there's literally no rules. And I think for all of us, we don't really, like, I mean, we're just not limited by genres anymore. So everybody, like, if the song hits, like, if it's, you know, if it slaps, then it slaps. Yeah. And people are going to fuck with it. So
yeah, and I mean, it's
full time to be like a music fan.
It most definitely, and it's a beautiful time to be a content creator. The world of digital collaboration that exists now, the possibility of digital collaboration, the means by which to Dropbox or share project files, you know, and open things up, and like you're doing. You don't necessarily do the lyrics or write the lyrics to your songs. You put out an electronic track and invite artists to come and collaborate with you and to be featured on the track.
Except on this one, I did the old school way of going into the studio and doing the vocal tracking.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, let's start getting into a little bit of that and your method and process. Like myself as an electronic musician, I am totally out of the box. My recording system is massive and huge, but I literally use it like a big digital 4-track. I do not use internal effects. I do not use internal compressions, synthesizers. Everything is rack mount synths, rack mount effects, old school beatboxes, things like that. It's
Yeah, I
well,
envy you.
and it really depends on your style of production. You know, I've got a friend that I've given some tracks to before to master and kind of play with, and he's like, "Dude, you gave me no room. Like, I can't even put reverb on a track because you've already got reverb on it, and it's in the original recording. It's it's like, commit to the mix. This is the delay that I want on my keyboard, so I'm putting it into the signal path, and I'm not doing it in post production. You know."
I was talking to Vlado Meller. I don't know if you know him. He's a mastering engineer. He's done tons of stuff. But we were talking about Jesus, Kanye's record, which is like I love that record. And he said that when Rick Rubin brought the record to him, it was all already pretty much up and clipping, and it was just limited. A few dBs, but that was it. Like, and he could do absolutely nothing with it. Yeah. So I kind of get it, but at the same time, I mean, it depends on where you are in the process. But you know, if you have a certain, I mean, like the way we do it now, you know, you have a producer, you have writers, you had a mixing engineer, you also had mastering engineer. These days, I mean, we kind of do everything ourselves, and like I can mix better than most mixing engineers out there, just because most mixing engineers do not do electronic music. And what I've learned the hard way is electronic music is like fairly steep learning curve. Like I can make hip hop tracks for days. It's like zero effort. Yeah. But electronic, I can come up with ideas, but to make everything sound right and make it translate well in the club is very, very hard. Yeah. And I had an album done, and I wasn't ready. I realized that I was not good enough. And even now, like this is the first time that I'm comfortable with the material that's out. But and again, like, because right now we're going against, I mean, like everybody's out there. So you have like veterans like Skrillex, who is obviously a fucking Stravinsky of, electronic music. And then you have guys like Minesweeper and a bunch of others who like, they've been doing this since they were 10 or 11, Yep. So they've had their entire life to learn everything there is to learn from YouTube tutorials and elsewhere.
Yeah, and then you've still got mainstays out there like Kraftwerk, for crying out loud, that put an album out like crazy. A year or so ago and was touring, and even they, and even people like Trent Reznor and stuff, who really kind of did a lot to merge the electronic and the rock and roll world. Their vibe and their style of production on the electronic side has changed and moved and tweaked as well. I
just re-watched The Social Network, the Facebook movie. I don't know if you remember it. And I realized that he did soundtrack for that. And I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense now. Yeah. And I mean, it's soundtrack. Soundtracking is one of those that trips my wife out, because she's someone, as an actor and a comedian, who she keys in on faces, and once she sees a face, she can go down the rabbit hole of like 10 degrees of who they've been in movies with and when they were on this TV show. And with me, it's things like the little twinkle sound in Back to the Future, where I go, Silvestri, nice. And he makes those little sounds all the time in movies, and like John Williams, a prime example. Another one in American composition would be Aaron Copland, who just has a signature to the way that their stuff sounds, kind of like Alex Lifeson, the guitarist from Rush. They just have such a signature sound that when you hear it, it's one of those like, oh wow, that's got to be some new stuff by them. Whoa, cool. And it's interesting to be able to hear that translation through modern production techniques. Even though the techniques that these guys are using are tweaked for the modern era, you can still hear kind of that signature sound and style going on. Oh, yeah, for sure. I think what's happened in today's music, I mean, part of it, of course, it's more experimental, and it's just like a lot more versatile. You can go a million more different directions just because the software allows you to. But I think what has also happened is the mixes have gotten a lot tighter and a lot better. And I mean, people complain that it's, you don't have the same depth or space or whatever. Like, it's like when you listen to like old Stevie records or old Prince records, I mean, like musically they're amazing, but it's just like it doesn't have the same impact as the stuff that's being made these days.
Sure.
Like even when like Post Malone just did the Nirvana tribute show.
Yep.
And it was like, to me, that was so amazing. I grew up on Nirvana, so like to me that was like everything. And but just even off of it was a YouTube thing. It wasn't a big production, but like the sound hits so well that it's better than almost all live Nirvana recordings that are out there.
Yeah.
Probably not like, I'm not comparing it to the actual studio stuff, because Nirvana was way ahead of the time. But what I'm saying is, I think, progress, it's supposed to happen. I think these days the production and the mixing and is just, levels above what people used to do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the world is literally at everybody's fingertips now, as opposed to back in the day where if you wanted like a Moog anything, you'd have to be spending $1,500 and up. Now you can go out and buy a Moog plug-in pack for $150, and have them all digitally at your fingertips. Yeah,
and the cool thing that you get with the plugins is that you get ways to manipulate sound that would not have been possible in actual life. With certain modular synths, you can do some cool shit, but like still, the way you can modulate sound these days is like, it's incredible.
Oh, yeah, man. The world of granular synthesis, things like that, where you're literally taking like a microsecond of something and expanding it and tweaking it out. Like, there were some guys that I saw at CES this last year that I'm getting ready to have on the show that brought out a new one that's being used in all kinds of live applications, or was at the time. Not so much now. But, oh, my God, it was just so beautiful sounding. And I literally, in my interview there with them, was like, as a musician who does not work in the box, as far as synthesizers, things like that, like I don't use plugins. I've got 6 synthesizers and things like that. If I need a sound, I can make my sound. So it's not an issue for me. But this program made me want to play in the box. And I was like, that speaks a lot. When it's making an analog dude want to get into digital playing. You've done something special.
I used to have a Moog, just like the basic mini Moog.
Yeah.
And it was great. It's super satisfying, of course. I get that. Sure. But it wasn't hard enough for what I was making. No. But what I really loved, I had this small thing. It was called Mofo. It's one of the modules from the Prophet.
Yep.
From Dave Smith, Prophet, and the sounds that the Mofo made. I don't know if they still make it, but
you can still buy Dave Smith Mofos.
Okay, cool.
Those things are phenomenal. That's one that I've got like my little dream list, that I add to every once in a while, but that's still on there. And like I've got my Moog sitting over here next to me, and it's definitely one of those. They're almost one-trick ponies. They do one thing, they do them very well until you start getting into like the big Moogs. That are multiple thousands of dollars. Then you can start getting polyphony stuff like that. But aside from that, they're really more mono synths used for making bass lines, maybe making some. Yeah,
like for that, for that certain sound, they're perfect. It's as good as. Like if I were making electropop, that would be like the only thing I'd be using most of the time.
Yeah, like precisely. Most of my music, like I said, lies in the realm of lo-fi, ambient. I do a lot of experimental stuff. So for those textural sounds, the Moog's perfect. To be able to get those low rumbling growls that you literally cannot get anywhere else. that are just
totally.
guttural and move you. So what are some of the things that you're actively using right now to produce while you're on the road, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm entirely in the box. I have serum that I use for, I guess, for the leads, typically for the drops especially. Then I have the Anturia Lab is what it's called. Yeah, it's it has a bunch of vintage synths in it, so I use that a lot for pads and for other things that I want to sound a little bit more real. Basically, you know, all the toys that you have in your studio. That's the best I can, but the best approximation of those toys. And then for the plugins, I use some Waves, I use some UADs, except I don't have my UAD box with me, so I just I have a bunch, just variety of things that I like. And what I usually do on the tail end is I have a guy in New York who has some of my like analog compressors and EQs and a few other things. And so whenever I'm just about finished with the track, actually like once I stem it out, once I have the stems and I'm comfortable with it, I just send it all to him and he runs it through, whether it's compressors or whatever else I wanted to run it through, to kind of, you know, get it, you know, it might not be made on an analog synth, but it still gives it that a bit more richness and warmth and low end.
I actually made a decent little clip of money back in the day, basically reamping people's mixes, because everybody was mixing at home. You know, everybody was mastering at home, but it was like, if you can't afford all of those analog pre's, guys, send me your stereo mix down, and I will pump it through my analog tube pre's out to tape, out of that and back to digital. Yeah. So that you actively get the analog warmth, the analog spectrum range. You know, at that point, you can use a little bit of like tube spatial expansion, things like that, and really get that old school feel that you get off vinyl and tape.
Yep. Yeah, no, exactly. And with the kind of music that I make, it's a little bit harder to do the spatial component, just because in the club, once you flip it to mono, it just, you know, the more spatial it is, spatial it is, the more you will lose ultimately due to phase cancellation. Yeah. So I've been trying to make mixes narrower, which I don't love it, but it's kind of something that I have, I guess, less of a choice if I want my music to be played, you know, in big rooms. But yeah, I think I would really love to have a record, and I will make one eventually, where I can just, you know, when you have just a true stereo immersion, where it's, you know, you don't feel like, you know, you're just like inside of it. And like with the right sound of, you know, with the right sound system and the right record, you feel that. So it won't be like a standard electronic record, but I would like to make something like that so that you can just kind of truly get lost in it. So
a lot of my stuff, very much because I utilize spatial expansion in that way, really is much more suited to the headphone realm, where whenever you put it on, you hear those instruments jump apart by 2 or 3 feet. It's one of those like my in my home studio here where I am right now, one side of me is my production desk with my speakers. The other side is my workbench where I solder and design sound circuits, things like that.
Oh, that's cool.
And modify guitar pedals. So while I'm listening, I can be at one range and hear everything, but if I hit that spot, that's the sweet spot where the spatial differential happens. And you actively start hearing the full separation of left-right, you know. So it's like I can mix with my headphones on, and then whenever I monitor, I can turn it down a little bit and back away by 5 or 6 feet and be in a totally different immersive experience and let my ears kind of relax a little bit from mixing with headphones on, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I envy you. I have I finished the album on just using only headphones because I was here in Cape Town, didn't have anything else.
Yeah.
No, and I didn't. That Cape Town track, I made it entirely on headphones.
Yeah.
Never even had real speakers.
No, man, it is the tagline of this podcast, and it used to make a bunch of pro sound guys that I worked with laugh. Because the tagline for this podcast is where -10 is a number to be desired. And for those in the know, like +4 is microphone level. That's like professional studio broadcast AES quality. -10 is like RCA. That's like line level, But the concept is, hey, man, if that's a line level piece of gear that you need to use to get the sound that you're looking for, get it. Use it. I've got stuff over here in my rack that is fully mono that I've adapted to stereo. I have things like old school DBX 163 compressors that are just on and a slide, like more compression, less. That's all you can do.
Yeah, I use DBX as well.
But they're
baseline. It's great.
And that's just it. They're sought after. They're single half unit pieces that were made for mono recording back in the day. And they're RCA only, but they sound so beautiful. If it takes you using that -10 piece of gear to get the sound that you're looking for, use it. Don't be afraid to. Don't be afraid to hack things apart and make things the way you need to make them. If you gotta produce music while you're on the road with a pair of headphones, do it, man. If you're waiting for those perfect conditions to produce, you're going to miss the muse. You're going to miss it hard.
Yeah, it's that, and also it took me a while to get to the point where I accepted that a lot of people don't listen to music on great speakers, and I used to kind of just like, well, they'll get over it, but in reality, I still want to capture as much as possible, whatever the medium is. So I check a lot of my mixes, and sometimes I just do basic mixing, or not even. I kind of like the latter stages of my mixes. I do both in good headphones and on AirPods. Yeah. Just so that I can, because most people will hear it on AirPods.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the reason why the old studio test back in the day, whenever you mixed it down to tape or to CD, was you take it out to the car and you listen to it there, because that's where most people's listening to music was done, was in their car on the way to school, on the way to work. So if the mix sounded right in your car, you're going to be okay. I myself, I have like PreSonus Studio One, like original. You need an amp to drive them. 10-inch speakers. They're beautiful. Mm-hmm. I do not have them set up in my studio. I use Sony home tower speakers from like the 90s. They aren't anything crazy. They were from like my dad's old home stereo system that broke. And he was like, "You want these speakers?" Yeah. It's like, yeah. Because that's what people are listening to music through. They're listening to it through a normal home system. They don't. There are some people out there with an audiophile system, most definitely. But most people aren't listening to something through a $2,000 tube amplifier. They aren't listening to it on clip speakers.
It's harder to make something sound as impactful as possible on cheaper or
that's just
more
it.
basic consumer speakers. And so that's the skill really these days, because it's a lot easier to make when you have a lot to work with, it's a lot easier to get you get a bigger sandbox to play in.
Oh, most definitely.
Now when you're working within like a very small window, then you have to really get creative and figure out how to truly make the sound as impactful as possible, especially in like electronic, like the kind of electronic that I make.
Yes.
Where I have more melodic elements, but also have a fairly hard-driven drops that I want to, go hard in the club.
Yeah.
So
that's just kind of a prime example of that would be Billie Eilish. All the awards that she won, and when you look at a picture of her studio, like, son, it's next to her bed.
Yeah.
Like it's in her bedroom. you know, like
yeah.
I got a better setup than that, and she won how many awards? You know, so that's just it. The world of digital production and the world of online distribution, especially now during this time, is such a beautiful thing, such a freeing thing as an artist. You can get your music out there. It's so easy, and the crazy thing is, you're almost better nowadays putting out, like you did, like 5-track EPs, stuff like that, where you can put them out quick, because otherwise you can really get lost in the noise, you know?
Yeah, I think
it can be tough if you're like
lost in the noise.
Yeah, because
even the big artists, have hard time getting through.
Exactly.
I remember, I think it was like 2 years ago, Katy Perry put out an album, and she had like this, not egg hunt, but I think it might have actually been eggs, but they have this, egg, whatever. She had some stuff hidden around New York.
Yeah.
And basically the fans were supposed to hunt it, and once they figure out what it is, then she would drop the album. And only like 2 people showed up, and some locations nobody came.
Yeah.
And if you have somebody with the money and the machine behind her who is struggling, the shit can be pretty rough for everybody out there. So for all of us, it's a challenge now. It's just, but I mean, it's never been easy, so I'm not really expecting it to be.
No, well, that's just it. It's never been easy, but it's definitely the fact of people who are good will get noticed. People who are good, the communities who like that music will find it. And music like yours, what's great is like we've been saying about the electronic world and the world of electronic musicians and ambient musicians, things like that. A whole world has been opened up to us. People have started enjoying music for video games that electronic musicians make, things like that. So it's really brought about a whole new world of collaboration and that kind of stuff. And to see someone like you out there producing electronic music and then, like we were saying earlier, teaming up with and collaborating with hip-hop artists, other vocalists, lyric writers, things like that to produce words and vocals. It's really amazing. Let's get into a little bit of Don't Stop off your new album Choir Boy, with featuring Lucy J. Let's talk a little bit about that song, the creation of it, and then we'll listen to a little bit of it.
Lucy J, Polina singer. She's a good friend of mine. We've recorded so much music together, and I absolutely adore her. And there will be tons more coming up with her just because she just destroys every track she jumps on. She's an actress, also a dancer, doing a bunch of other things. She's just brilliant on every single level. So I love her. So yeah, we recorded this. It was actually a different track. The way most of my vocals get done is I have a track. I think it might work for somebody. It's like, yo, try this, see what you think. Then we lay down the vocals, and then, I come back to it 2 months later. I'm like, I love what you did, but I don't love what I did. So let me see if I can improve my part. And so that's what happened here. And the music was also kind of like a mix of things. There's this artist out of DC, YAA. She's really just great. I love her. And she has a song, Sweater, that has a similar chord progression. And at first I was like, I just love that song so much, I kind of wanted to remix it. And I started working on the remix, and I reached out to her people, and her people were like, sorry, we're not doing remixes now, because she only has like 4 or 5 songs out, and I think they're just trying to keep, the focus locked in on what she's putting out herself, just those songs. And I'm like, cool, well, I love her, but I can't use her vocals, so let me see what else might work. And then I remembered the verse that Polina did, and like, let me throw it on it and see how they'll sound. And it worked really well. So yeah, after that, I just keep, messing with the music and make it pop. My biggest challenge for a long time was to make drops that are both melodic but also hard hitting. And at first I would always try to kind of keep the melodic part of the track and just use a similar melody or chord progression or what have you on the drop. And it just never got to that crazy energy that I needed, because like when I would play it live, I'm like, this is cool, this is like great fun to listen to, but like doesn't make you want to just jump and go crazy. And so with that track, I was like, let me just like flip it completely and just like have the drop being really not, it picks up on the elements from early in the song, but just basically just like goes completely different direction. And that's what I did there. And it's like, that works really well. So I was like, let me keep doing that. So I used kind of that approach throughout the Choir Boy. So yeah, that was the first song I made for the record.
All right, well, let's check some of this track out. It is the first song off the new album Choir Boy by the artist Koala, Don't Stop, featuring Lucy J. That melodic drop that you're talking about that is just so incredible, so clubby in its build. It is really a unique and distinct style that you have established for yourself as Koala, Alexei.
Thank you.
Like I said, I have been enjoying it for the last 2 weeks.
I really like how it came out. I just want, I want to make music that I can listen to as well. So a lot of electronic music out there, like, it's worked great in club, but it's not something you want to listen to and repeat. But I'm kind of like, I'm still all about melodies. Just maybe because I, play instruments, and maybe because I'm Russian and we're very much in our feelings, but I like melodies.
Yes.
So yeah, that's kind of where that comes from.
It's great because, like I said, there is a range of music and styles that go on in this album, and in the production of each track. It's so amazing to listen to something and, like we were saying earlier, hear a distinct style, the way that you do when you listen to composers from movies. Or classical composers, electronic musicians very much have that same thing with them. And it's interesting to hear your production style from track to track and be able to kind of identify that, and yet still have such a range of sound from each individual song. I wanted to talk about one more track, Jamaica Interlude, because that one, I'm big on middle tracks on albums, and the way that albums are arranged and why people arrange them the way that they do. And I found it an interesting kind of break with Jamaica Interlude, right there as things start to step into the middle of this 7-track album from you, Choir Boy. So let's talk a little bit about the inspiration behind it and the process of it.
Yeah, So that vocal session came from, I have a friend in Jamaica. I love Jamaica. It's like my second home, basically. For the longest time, I couldn't travel to many places until I had my papers in the U.S. And Jamaica was one of the places where Russians were allowed without a visa. So yep. I went there a lot, met there a lot of people. I met a lot of people there, got to know some of the artist community. Anyway, there's this artist and dancer, Mystic Davis. She was the girl who was in the Major Lazer track Bubble Butt. I don't know if anybody remembers it, but it was a cool song. Yep. And also danced in like all of their videos. I just ran into her on the beach. She was doing a video for Vogue, I think. And I'm like, well, that girl is hot. Let me go talk to her. But so we clicked and just became friends. And so every time I'm in Jamaica, I see her. She lives in Portland. Portland is this beautiful, lush parish. The other side of Blue Mountains in Jamaica. It's just a beautiful place. So we recorded tons of stuff there. We recorded tons of stuff when she was in New York. And this verse, originally I was going to put it on the song that's right before it, the Bad Girl song. But I felt like that song already had a lot of elements going on, that it would be just too much and too busy. That's usually my problem. Try to keep things a little bit simpler. I almost never succeed at that, but I'm trying to do better.
I'm the same way.
And so what I did is I cut out the bad, I cut out certain elements from the verse and used that as just like occasional call outs in the Bad Girl track. But I loved her verse so much, so I'm not like, I still wanted to use it. And I wanted to give it more of its own place rather than being within a track. Because once it's in the track, you have the drums going, you have other things going. It's just like, it's a little bit more, it's hard. It takes some of the focus away. And I wanted to just drive the focus straight to her verse and her MC skills, because like she's fire. She's amazing. And what I did was kind of dropped out most of the instruments and just did low pass on a lot of the keys, I guess, and just made the entire vibe both focus on on her verse, but also kind of make it a little bit lo-fi, I guess. That made me think of kind of the energy, of Jamaica, the place where we're recording it in Jamaica, and just make it a little bit warmer, but also have the drive that kind of, like her verse, really her lyrics, her delivery drives that drives that interlude. So the instruments are almost secondary. The instruments are just there to support it and give it kind of like melodic foundation, really. And I just wanted, it worked really well on its own. Yeah. And that's how I ended up putting it there.
It really does speak to your hip-hop production background as well as your electronic background, the fact that you've got a 45-second interlude. Not many musicians are doing that kind of stuff. Not many styles of music do that, where it's like, here's something that's just kind of going to transition you from one mode to another as we go through things. And this really does kind of switch that mode, like you were saying, to a little bit more lo-fi, a little bit more down.
A little more human.
Yeah. So let's check this out. This is Jamaica Interlude featuring Mystic by YAA Koala off the new album Choir Boy.
So welcome to the land of the fittest, the home of the straight, the land of mystic. Mystic, Lucy J, punish on. Let me tell you how I get with this. I hold it down from the block to the pyramids. I hold the crowd, put it down, we be getting it. Now look around, fuck around, we be getting it. I mix the crown and keep lighting. The music is so melodic, the way I
It just feels good. I love that shit.
Yeah, man, that is such a great track. Like I said, such a perfect interlude. It really does move you from one part of the album into the next, and stands
Makes me
on
hype
its
every
own.
time I hear it.
It's
I just
just, it's so well done.
I love her verse.
Well, and your production is so polished. The way that everything is set in its place, arranged not only spectrally but in a very visual way, auditorially. Whenever you close your eyes, you can see where things are arranged.
That's cool. Thank you. That's really good to hear.
It's a lot of how I listen to music. I do videos the same way. The first time I'm listening to it, or I'm just hearing it. If it's a video, I'm just watching it. The next time I'm looking for detail and going, ooh, what was that? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And the third time I am looking at the forest and the trees at the same time. And trying to see the big picture of everything and hear everything at the same time. Kind of like when you close your eyes with headphones on and really start listening to Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones and realize that there's like 15 maraca tracks going on.
Wow.
Like, it's crazy, but the only way that you can do it is to put headphones on and close your eyes, and you'll slowly start hearing those different polyrhythms happening to make that one rhythm happen. And it's like, whoa, that's crazy. The production that it took to make that happen. And to be able to close your eyes and hear this production level is what I like. I like being able to, I guess, visually hear things inside my head. And your music very much does that. So thank you for that.
Cool. That's good to hear. Thank you.
As we kind of close things out here, where can people go to find your music? I've been listening to it on the Spotify links that I was provided, stuff like that. But what platforms are you on? Do you have a website? Are you doing any digital events to promote the new album, Choir Boy? Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. So whatever platform people are using, whether it's Spotify, Tidal, Apple, Deezer, pick one. Just YAA Koala will get them to the right place. YAA with 2 A's, and then Koala, because koalas are lovely and we all love them. YAA Koala. Instagram is where I usually post anything that's coming up. So the lockdown has been pretty crazy here with everything closed. So, and I have no gear. So what I made a video. So I was able to do with what I had already. But now things just opened up this week. So I plan on making a trip finally to the store and picking stuff up.
All right.
Once that happens, I can do digital events. But I'm of two minds on the digital stuff, because I think the way I see electronic music, and really any music, but especially electronic music, to me, it's all about community. It's all about dancing together. And doing it by yourself kind of like defeats the purpose. Like when I do shows, I usually just jump in and dance with everybody. I mean, it's just when humans were still living in bands of 50 to 150 people, everybody would get around the fire at night, and people would drum, people would sing, and people would dance and tell stories. And the way I see it, that's kind of like the fundamental human experience,
Absolutely.
And that's how I see music, and especially electronic music, because in the end, it's like heavy drum, heavy bass, and people dancing, And so that's kind of like our version of dancing around the fire after, a day of hunting and lounging in the hammock.
So that's just it. It was a means not only to pass on culture, but to pass on history. It was a means to celebrate,
and to connect and bond with your group.
To one another, to your ancestors, to your gods. music was everything. It was everything.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm kind of like, I'll probably do some digital events. Not probably. I think I'm supposed to. So I have some stuff coming up, but it seems kind of hollow to me. I would rather just wait until I can play live again. But we'll see. Whatever is coming up, I'll announce it on Instagram. Instagram is YAA Koala.
Okay. Do you have a website or anything like that?
No, okay. I do. I think it just redirects to my other platforms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Always good to know if people have websites. I like to direct folks there. So,
let me see what my website directs. I have no idea. I think
that's the best. I love it.
Really, it's really just. The music is out there. It's only literally on all platforms.
And
people
that's
just
how
Google
you can
Koala
tell
and they'll find it.
Artist, folks, right there.
I think websites. I don't know. I think people kind of just use Instagram and Twitter for everything these days.
Sure, no. I mean, I'm in the podcast world, things like that, and it is the same way, my friend.
Yeah.
Where it's like they use their distribution platform. They've got an Insta for it. They've got a Twitter and a Facebook. I have websites because I build websites. So that's why I have websites. Otherwise, I don't know that I'd have websites.
I used to have one a long time ago. I made one of those when I was a kid. I had one of those Angel Fire, GeoCities websites. That was cute.
Angel Fire. Man, I haven't thought about that forever. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, for coming on, talking about your music, your process, your means of creation. I love talking this stuff with musicians, with artists, with engineers, because it's one of the biggest things that I get asked, whether it's professionally or musically, is how did you even get into that? And it's interesting to hear people's stories because it's so often such an organic process. It's just something that they had an interest in and just kind of started following, And it's great to demystify that for people. There are a lot of people out there that want to make electronic music. There are a lot of people out there that want to make soundscaping, want to write lyrics, things like that. What advice would you give for somebody that's wanting to get into electronic music? Alexa?
YouTube tutorials. Literally.
Yeah.
Everything you need to know is on YouTube.
Amen.
There are several. The guys that I really love is Excellent Sound, XLNT Sound. They do some really great stuff for more for dubstep and harder shit. But there are tons. You can learn so much from as far as production techniques and mixing techniques. You can learn everything really. From YouTube. That's where I learned most of the things that I know.
Yeah.
And apart from that, it's really just making more and more and more until you feel comfortable with the quality and you kind of begin to see when it becomes second nature, when you kind of know what works, what doesn't, and what how to bring it all together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So YouTube and a lot of practice.
Amen, man. Amen. I couldn't.
Not sexy, but that's what it is.
Well, no, really, it is. Because I've been making my electronic music and experimental music for easily almost 20 years now. It took me that long to go get registered with ASCAP, folks. Go do it. If you're a musician, just go do it. But if I could go back to that kid with the 4-track, and I still have that same 4-track, it's maintained. I use it for certain sounds specifically, because there are certain things like reverse slowed down tape only sounds right with the reversed slowed down tape. It doesn't sound the
That
same.
thing is so annoying that they don't have that. They have that in Pro Tools, but they don't have that in Ableton, and I don't understand why.
It doesn't sound
and
the
like
same,
plugins
though.
that create that, but
It doesn't sound
with
the
Ableton
same.
you can. Oh, it still doesn't sound the same.
Like,
I get
well,
that.
because there's that individuality of each motor, you know, the different
Fair
torque
enough.
things. Like, there's so many different little variables when it comes to something like that. And with the 4-track, where you can play with the speed knob, that kind of stuff, like, you can get a lot of sound warping that you cannot get in the digital world. So if you record it on the tape, then play it back at normal speed and capture it, you can have all kinds of sonic fun. But to go back and tell that kid, like, hey, don't hook that up this way, do it this way instead, would, oh my God. Like, I've listened to some of my 4-track stuff in the last year or so, and it's like, I can see what I was trying to do.
Yeah, I have a lot of those moments. My entire last
thing.
record was that.
You gotta
see what
be...
I was trying to do, just didn't execute it quite there.
Well, that's the thing, though, is that you did it. Whether you could execute it or not, you did it, and it was the trying to execute it that made you have that aha moment the next time you tried it.
Yep, absolutely.
You know, so you really do have to be fearless with it, folks. You really do have to be willing to experiment, be willing to fail, be willing to destroy tracks. Be willing to.
Be willing to throw away things.
Oh,
my
God,
God.
yes.
I go through several versions of each track.
Yeah.
And one thing that I like, Tyler the Creator always mentions it. For his song, I think it's For Boredom, or 911, whatever. The one that he put out was version 27. Yep. And it wasn't just like, tweaks on mixes. He literally made 27 tracks for that song.
Yeah.
So that's just how it is. And be willing to throw it away. Like, don't get attached to things. Because I think the best thing you can do is let a song sit for at least 3 months or longer if you have the luxury. And just come back to it and see how you feel about it. Because one, you will hear a million things that you hadn't heard before that need to be fixed or cut or improved. And two, you might just, you might think it's brilliant, or you might think it's underwhelming. So it's hard to get that third party, observer perspective if you're in it all the time. So the best thing you can do is just take a step back and just let it sit for a while.
Yeah, amen. That's that, and rearranging things, especially once you start getting toward the point of like, okay, these are the tracks that I want on my album. Arrange them one way, listen to it for a week, then put it away for a couple weeks. Then then go switch a couple tracks around and see how it sits with you. That was one of the things that I loved about the mini disc format, was that I could do that on the fly. Like with my little portable player, like, oh, I'm going to switch these two tracks around and listen to it and see what it sounds like in that order, and then you could just pull the thing out and slide the little window over and protect it like a disc. It was great.
That's cool.
So, but once again, thank you so much for taking the time. You can find Choir Boy, the new album by Koala, on all major platforms, folks. I have been enjoying it on Spotify. It's out there on everything right now. Alexei, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for coming on, talking about your process, talking about what moves you musically, what gets your itch twitching, let's just say. As we go out, folks, don't forget, stop on by TalkingSoundShow.com. That is where you can find all the episodes. That is also where you can find the freelance directory. If you're a freelancer like me and want to pay it forward, hop on there. Give us a contact. Let us know companies in your area that hire freelancers. We'll put them on the list so that we can all find work. Until next time, everyone, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, keep reaching for 11. We're going to go out with the middle track off of Choir Boy by Koala. Do mushies, not Coke.
Thank you, Chris.
Hold the line.